Section 3.4, Summary Statistics, Measures of Variation. The last summary statistics that we spoke about were measures of center, and that was mostly mean and median. Today we're going to talk about how spread out data is. So the first one that we'll talk about is range. That tells us the spread or width of an entire data set. We calculate the range as the difference between the minimum and the maximum value. The next summary statistics that we'll talk about will be quartiles, and this might be familiar to you if you've ever made or seen a box and whisker plot. In order to make a box and whisker plot, you need to take your data, break it into 4 even groups. The first group of data will be the first quartile. It'll be the first 25% of the data. Then you'll have the median, which we talked about last time, being the marker for the middle of the data. The third quartile will be the value that is at the 75% mark, basically saying that 75% of the data is below that point. And we will have the maximum value, which captures all 100% of the data. Using these quartiles and the min and max values, we can make a box and whisker plot. In order to make a box and whisker plot, what you will do is first put your data in order from least to greatest. So on the screen right now is an example of data from 0 to 55. Identify the lower and upper extremes. Pretty easy. That would be 0 and 55. Then you find the median. That's that middle number. And in this case, it would be 29. That's the number in the middle of all of the data. And if there were 2 numbers that shared the middle, you'd have to find the average of those 2 numbers by adding them together and dividing by 2. Now, what you do is you take the lower half, and that would be the 0 to 12, and you take the upper half, the 35 to 55, and you find the median again of those lower halves and upper halves, and that is your first quartile and third quartile. That has broken your data into 4 even groups. Then you create a box and whisker plot, labeling each of those on a scale. So when I do that, I start with 0, and I make a scale that goes all the way to 55. I kind of ignore the numbers that I'm going to be working with. I make the scale, and then above the scale, I will label each of the things that we need to find. That would be the lower extreme, the lowest number, the lower quartile or the first quartile, the median, the upper quartile or the third quartile, and the upper extreme or the maximum value. You draw a box around the lower quartile, median, and upper quartile. All right, so what I want you to try is activity 1 in our notes packet. All right, so this is activity 1. Suppose we have measured the height in inches of 12 people who identify as female. The data values are listed below. Your job will be to construct a box and whisker plot of that data. Step 1 in this will be to put the data values in order from least to greatest. Let's do that. I see that we have 59, 60, 61, 63, and so forth. All right, this is called a 5-number summary. These are the numbers that are required to make a box and whisker plot. The minimum is the smallest number. The maximum is the largest number. The median, that's the middle number. So it's useful to know how many numbers you have to work with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that means that if I go 5 in from each side, this number here in the middle will be the median. I have my median is 64. First quartile. I'm going to ignore the 64. It's not in either of my groups right now, and I'm going to find the first quartile number, so the middle of this lower set of data. So that is 61. And then this upper set, median, 69. Then I'm going to make my scale, not thinking about the numbers that I've written down, but just thinking about my data from above. So I'm going to go from 55 to 75. I'm going to count by fives for my scale. 75. And maybe that's too scrunched together, so maybe I'll spread this out a little bit more. 59, we'll estimate, and I'm going to write 59 above to add clarity to my graph. 72, label it. 64 is my median. 64, 61. Okay, and then 69. And I'll draw a box around my data values in the middle and little lines on out to the outside. And it's a matter of style, whether or not you want the ends of your whiskers for this box and whisker plot to be dots or lines. For me, I typically do lines. Some people will do this instead to have on the end. Up to you. All right, so there's another measure of spread, and that is the inner quartile range. And that is the difference between the third and first quartile. Oh, and I forgot to label my third quartile. That was the 69 right up here, 69. And so how far is it from my quartile 1 number to my quartile 3 number? And then there'd be a median somewhere in between. So quartile 1 to quartile 3. In this case, it was 69 minus 61. And 69 minus 61 appears as though my inner quartile range was 8 for that set of data. Okay, so this tells us that the middle 50% of the heights lie within 8 inches. And so oftentimes we want to know what's going on in the middle of a set of data. And so it's saying that from this point here to this point here, and each one of these box and whisker pieces captures 25%. So from your min to quartile 1 is 25%. From your quartile 1 to your median is 25%. And you got another 25% from your median to your quartile 3. And you've got your last 25% from your quartile 3. And so that's all 100%. And so this is that middle 50 that they're talking about for the inner quartile range. Now for this activity, you'll want to use a spreadsheet program because, well, we're working with a larger set of data for one thing. So what we'll do with this one is we will capture this data, use and copy and paste it over into a Google Docs program. It would be wise to have maybe the notes open in a Word document or a Google Docs document so you can copy and paste it. Sometimes it's harder with a PDF document to get those numbers over. But it's the same activity. We're just going to use a spreadsheet program in order to figure that out. And I'll come back to that here in a moment.